Hello, and welcome to the BWF webinar on BWF Insight Data Science for the Business of Fundraising, now offering the Total Pipeline Solution. I'm your presenter, Josh Birkholz, Principal at Benz Whaley Flester. I'm excited to have you here. Historically, development has been considered a relationship business. You've heard a lot of fundraisers say development is really always just knowing the right people to talk to. It's having the good relationships with the wealthy people in town, having the right people on the board. And historically, when fundraising was basically something incremental to the operating revenue, when campaigns were for singular initiatives, or the prospect pool was small enough to know from the top of your head, this was sufficient. But now, as we all know, fundraising has become critical to our operations. The campaigns have escalated and become very comprehensive, and the prospect pipeline is requiring integration with our very processes to meet the demands of an ever-expanding frontline. So fundraising may always be sitting in someone's living room asking for money, but I want to talk to you today a bit about which living rooms should we pursue. Well, Benz Whaley Flester has had a long history with prospect development. Our whole history as a firm has been a core service area back in our start in the 1980s, and we have great pride in our role in really founding and crafting the profession of prospect research, but also to move on into the integration of analytics in the 2000s. Since 2004, we have installed and helped guide the formation of over 100 in-house data science departments doing predictive analytics and business intelligence service in the fundraising profession. Over these 33 years, we've really helped to establish countless numbers of prospect development programs, helped define their workload, redefine their structure and their output, and we've served large organizations and small organizations alike. Certainly we were very proud of the many multi-billion-dollar campaigns that we've served and continue to serve to this day. Our organization has really been in the business of fundraising, and I want to talk to you about the data science side of the business of fundraising through our Total Pipeline Solution. The team that services the Total Pipeline Solution is the BWF Insight team. That's me in the middle, Josh Birkholz at the top, and my role has been as a principal with the firm, helping to really establish our work in analytics and how we look at the overall underlying infrastructure to a major gift business model of fundraising. I'm joined by some of our consulting professionals, most notably Bond Lammy, who's a managing associate within the BWF Insight team, where she is a real strategist around prospect development, how it's organized, how it can maximize its output and be the very service-oriented, strong in terms of resources and approach. Emma Hinke also is part of the prospect development consulting team with a special skill set on the data science side, having a background in predictive analytics and the numbers behind the prospect pipeline management approach. Andy Schultz is our Director of Analytics, doing hands-on work in the predictive modeling space, crunching numbers, helping to identify prospects, providing a very unique approach to how we do our models that are very unique within the industry compared to the competitive space. And Marissa Onko, a high-level number cruncher, does a lot of our macro-level forecasting and projections at the unit level and determining program drivers, kind of a big-picture numbers person. Bruce Wenger, who serves in a business development function and really helping to craft and analyze what is the ideal service offering for the needs at hand of our clients and really provide an alignment between our team. And then Allison, who is our lead project manager, who helps to design the timeline and make sure that we're meeting the deliverables of our projects. So this is our core team that's providing the BWF Insight service around analytics and prospect development. An integrated team. Perhaps you were familiar with our previous name, DonorCast, which was our analytics division, and Benz Whaley Flester's prospect development work. Well, both of those are now merged together into this new team called BWF Insight. Now, the BWF Insight approach is really looking at the overall underlying data science for the business of fundraising. Key to this is our Total Pipeline Solution offering. Now, we look at all of the underlying infrastructure of a high-performing major gift program that, and when I say major giving, I mean in the macro sense, high touch with high net worth prospects in the individual space, corporate, foundation, plan giving, anywhere where we're using individual one-on-one conversations to maximize the philanthropic potential of our constituency, and that's the predominant portion of our business model or the areas we're hoping to expand. Well, it's not enough just to hire a lot of gift officers and say, all right, go and make some money for our organization. There has to be a process behind them. And the total pipeline solution at its core is what is that process to help the front line be as successful as it can to maximize the use of our resources and the return on our fundraising investment. And so we've organized an approach where through a consolidation of our services and alignment to the work that organizations use as they build up that front line, we're conducting analysis of the program to determine the drivers and to establish where's the biggest return on investment moving forward, to scoring methodologies in terms of predictive modeling and capacity assessment to initially feed the pipeline, through verification services to vet those names, to identify external prospects, to feed them into portfolios and maintain an ongoing portfolio maintenance process to keep portfolios thriving, through performance things are we doing that are actually causing us to raise more money? Are we measuring too many things? Are we measuring the right things? Are we doing what we should be doing? Through developing the in-house capacity to do all of these things, whether it's building those analytics models, conducting the prospect research, managing relationships, managing portfolios, establishing the program, the policies, and the procedures to manage that, and providing consultative diagnostic, assessment, and ongoing support to help keep an organization moving forward in the direction that they want to go in. So really being an ally to you to help you look good and to help you raise more money. So I want to talk through some of those key components with you. The first one is our analysis service. So BWF Insight Analysis provides a fact-based assessment of your development program. You might be most familiar with this work if you're familiar with our work in campaigns, because we do an analysis of the data of your program leading into a campaign, looking at past giving trends, the engagement levels of the constituency, the capacity of the database, how we're yielding or netting portions of that capacity through our current processes, and how we might be able to yield a larger amount. So it's looking at the historical drivers and conducting future simulations so that we can raise more money. The outcome would be projections both on the economic side as well as really from a hands-on approach. My observation in doing projections over the many years is the base level giving is very predictable using standard economic forecast methods, but the major level giving is not very predictive by looking at the donor behavior, but it is quite predictive by looking at the frontline officer behavior. What are their consistent close rates, who's in the pipeline to be solicited, what is their solicitation rates and their yield rates. We can have a pretty good prediction at the upper levels by officer behavior and still having hands-on through a traditional high-touch feasibility approach for the very, very top of the pyramid. So our analysis looks not only at the capacity of the database, but also says how are we going to net more of this capacity moving forward. Very directed. And oftentimes the first step is to do scoring, which is predictive modeling. It's capacity, it's engagement scoring. There's lots of ways that we might scale some of those decision points. And what do I mean by that? When you meet a prospect for the first time, your questions are about, do I think this person has the financial ability to give a major gift? I might think, do I think that they actually will give some major gift because their interests align with ours, they're connected to people here, they've given to us in the past? Or I might also be asking, how warm is this relationship? Is this going to take me a long time, or is this going to be relatively quick? Well, those questions are something we can gain through conversations with the prospect. In prospect research, we can gain those through one-off looking up data resources that might inform those. You might find wealth indicators, we might find propensity indicators, we might find engagement indicators which show the timing and warmth. But when we try to scale those questions, historically capacity has been the easiest one through wealth screening, even though it's not a perfect science, leaning pretty heavily on assets that are in the public space. It's probably the first pass that we've had. And in recent years, we've seen a growth in predictive modeling, providing us a way to scale the propensity questions, which is the probability of giving a major gift, with sort of ad hoc engagement scoring, showing us information around timing. They're doing lots of stuff right now. They're probably more likely to take that visit right now. Engagement scoring often being the least scientific, predictive modeling the most scientific, and the capacity being often the most expensive because we're buying data elsewhere. Well, we're really taken a unique approach to using predictive analytics through all of these pieces, through a smarter propensity measurement and even narrow propensity measurement for specific items, engagement scoring based on weighting through card sorting and discrete choice modeling, and also on-demand capacity estimation where we're rethinking how best to impute capacity in a broader reach than perhaps can be found through traditional wealth screening approaches. As a result, at a very simple level, we can help identify prospects, but also feed portfolios. So here's a sample of modeling results. In this case, just to orient you to the chart, the 0, 1s, and 2s on this slide deck, or on the top of this table, are the lower 90% of this organization, which is an actual organization, but the name is blinded. And so the 0, 1, and 2 collectively make up the bottom 90% by probability of giving a major gift in this major gift model. The 6, 7, 8, 9 taken together represent the top 1% of the database in their probability. Now this first column in the middle of the table here is the not assigned, so they're not assigned to a prospect officer. And the final column is managed, which means that they are assigned to an officer to maintain that relationship. Now looking at this organization after the modeling, we realize that the 0, 1s, and 2s, this bottom 90% of the database, only 3 individuals had ever given a major gift that had these scores. In the top 1%, 40% of these individuals had given a major gift. So in this case, 40% conversion rate. If you're a baseball fan in the U.S., that's a batting average of 400, pretty good. And in the bottom portion, the bottom 90%, about 3 out of 95,000 individuals, which is not a very good batting average. We're swinging at balls that they're not even near the plate. They're probably 6 feet away, and somehow we're still swinging at them. So my question is, at this organization, why do we have over 1,000 people assigned where a conversion rate's been 3 out of 95,000? And why do we have 500 names unassigned down here where a conversion rate has been 40%? Now that's just a one dimension, which is propensity, and how it might influence how our portfolio optimization is assigned. But certainly, if you can imagine doing the same thing with engagement, propensity, with capacity, how do we establish a framework that we can optimize those portfolios? But the key is, since these are singular dimensions and they're machine matching algorithms, it requires some verification, an initial assessment of their ability to make a gift to your organization, either by confirming a capacity rating or placement into a given program. For many organizations, the scale of meeting all of the verification after screening, after analytics, is too much for their existing staff to do. Well, at Ben Swaley Flessner, through the BWF Insight team, we provide outsourced, on-demand analysis of those results and do the actual verification work for you. But in addition to verifying and vetting those screening results, certainly everything we do we also teach. We can help establish a verification process and provide more efficiency to the process you already have. But we can also do external prospect identification, which might not come from internal analytics of our existing pool, but perhaps it's on large areas of affinity or interest or new programs that you're launching where you don't have an existing constituency. We can do external prospect identification work in a very hands-on process, as if you have your own prospect researchers in-house. And for many of you, you might have a very full team. Others, you might have a very busy team. And we're here to help out, either to supplement the team that you already have or to help meet those needs if you don't have the in-house staffing. So both for completing the campaign pyramid, but also establish the prospects themselves, which could be cause-based or dealing with the portfolios themselves. So hands-on work in the verification and the identification work that might happen after scoring, but before we feed the very portfolios that we're here to serve. But now once names are in portfolios, I showed you that example with just the dimension of major gift model and where the conversion rate was different. You may layer other things. So that was predictive model. Here's capacity range and perhaps a very simple connection type of score. For many organizations, they establish what would be like a target zone, and that's the approach that we take. Maybe like the strike zone in baseball, if it's between the knees and the numbers and over the plate, and at a certain speed, we bat at a certain average. If it's outside of the strike zone, we don't bat as well at those pitches. Similarly, there's a criteria of a major gift prospect of certain levels of capacity, levels of warmth, of probability, where if they meet these criteria, the criteria of this target zone, we realize that they convert at a rate that makes sense for us to deploy field officers. Outside of that, it doesn't. So how do we maintain a look at that portfolio that we're pushing names into that target zone of the very connected, the very likely, and the wealthy, where it makes sense from an organizational stewardship perspective, stewardship of our resources, that these are the names we should deploy officers to. And perhaps how do we segment those that we're not going to deploy officers to, such as those that might have more modest levels of connection, but have high capacity, what's our institutional warming strategy for this VIP group that we get them engaged so that it might make sense? So an ongoing review and rebalancing. So the method that we took, and I don't mind giving credit to where I first helped to craft our approach, was based on the A&E show Hoarders, which a lot of us, you have perhaps seen that show and find it comical at times or sad at other times, but they're people with compulsive hoarding disorders. And for most of us watching that show that don't have issues with compulsive hoarding, we just want them to go in, take that person out of there, clean the house, and put them back into a clean house. But they never do it that way. And the reason is because if they were to do that, the behaviors wouldn't stick, and it would just go back to a mess in a few months right afterwards. But since it's an underlying issue, they need the person to make the choices for themselves to clean up their own house. Now, I don't want to say that major gift officers have compulsive hoarding disorders. In fact, oftentimes, most of the behaviors in portfolio management are a direct reflection of our own metrics. Perhaps we have gift-based metrics with transom gifts counting. That would be an often cause for hoarding. Perhaps it's other ways that we measure our solicitation or our visit metrics that resist portfolio churn and good maintenance. That's usually the why. But in the behavioral change, those habits are there nonetheless. So determining that threshold and that criteria from the analysis that we had mentioned, first this target zone analysis, we provide that information, and much like in the show Hoarders, they show a person an object and say, all right, this is the type of object. The criteria is that you use this every day and it's important to your life. These are things that you keep. Here's other objects that have value, but they're getting in the way and you don't use them every day. These are the things that we should donate or sell. Here's other things that it's not garbage, so we should recycle that because it can perhaps still be of value as something else in the future. And then there's trash, which we want to keep that limited because it goes to the landfill, but let's face it, the value is certainly not there. And using the similar criteria for prospects. Here's a prospect that's an ideal. They're passionate about our organization. They have the capacity. They've got a warm relationship. You align well. That's a keeper. Here's another person that has all this criteria, but perhaps they're a better fit for a different part of our organization. We want to donate or sell or basically move this to a different gift officer or to a different business function to manage that name. Maybe it's a corporate foundation or a different region or a different unit or a different specialty or even a different personality. Here's other names where maybe they don't make sense for the major gift team, but if we move them back into the base and develop them for several years, we can recycle, and in the future they might be a prospect. And then here's other names that frankly are unlikely to give to us and don't feel fond about our institution, and we should move on to other areas where we can be more successful. Once we establish that criteria, if the officer maintains their own action, the habit starts to stick, especially if we evaluate and find the room for additional space. We refill those portfolios with better names, and then we rinse and repeat and establish a monthly ongoing process. The key is that we determine the thresholds and framework, but the officer does the action. This is core to our methodology for how we help restart portfolio optimization for our clients. So we analyze, we build the scores, we can verify those scores, we can actually help to revamp the whole portfolio process. But once we have names in portfolio, who they are sometimes doesn't matter as much as what we do. And what I found is the way most organizations have set metrics is basically one of two ways. They've either conducted benchmarking to find what 10 other places do and say, well, let's do that same thing, or they have an executive that came from a different organization and brought their old system with them. So this worked at my last place, it must work here. The challenge is there's a lot of confounding factors there. It could be such that because fundraising tracks so closely with national statistics, really most of higher education, for example, grew at almost 40% since 2009. Philanthropy's grown at 12%. Let's say that you put a new metric system in and saw tremendous growth, but it was actually on track with the economy. How do you know that it was not the macroeconomic effect, but it was your metric system that caused all that growth? It's really hard to know that. So what we've been struggling with over the years, and we think we've arrived at in the recent years, is a way to establish causality in the metrics approach. Being very data science focused in all that we do, we wanted to apply it to the work that we did. And so what we did is we developed a comparative analysis approach based on producing a Pareto principle for some among the fundraisers whose closing the largest number of guests, the most amount, or establishing the high performers, and then the lower performers, comparing that against the baseline activity work so we can determine which things are the high performers and low performers doing at the same rate. If they're doing it at the same rate, it's not causing a performance differential. But here are things that they're doing different. If there's a lot of difference in how they're doing things, there's a big differential. We think that those are key towards some separation, and we can test that in terms of the metrics that are causing a higher performance difference. And then that helps us to narrow in on the metrics that really matter and measure on the focus performance and context of the team moving forward, so it's an actionable metrics approach. And the questions might be across the board. Executives will often ask us, are we under asking? Are we making enough visits? Are we qualifying enough? Are we soliciting enough? Are we asking soon enough in the relationship? These are the common questions, but it's so much more than that. It might be not as simple of how many visits. In fact, for some organizations, we found that visits are neutral. If someone did 20 more or 20 fewer on the year, we could not prove statistically that they'd raise any more or less money. But the ratio of solicitation visits to all other visits might be relevant. Maybe penetration statistics within the portfolio might be relevant. But knowing what things work specifically for the organization are what's important, because we found that no two programs are truly alike, and nor are two metric systems going to be the same are going to fit for everybody. So we want to focus on catering the right approach based on causality of what's working within your organization. So within our portfolio program, we can analyze the portfolios, but then once we have names in, how do we make sure that we're getting that return of investment? And that's through our causal performance metrics approach. So in all those things, as I mentioned, everything we do, we also teach. Maybe you just want help in developing a simple engagement score. Maybe it's actually building predictive models yourself, overall analytics. There's so much we can do on the analytics side. As I mentioned, over 100 places across the U.S. and North America, Europe, the Pacific Rim, we've helped to establish those processes of doing fundraising analytics. In terms of relationship management, establishing what are the right best processes for doing moves management, for establishing those metrics, putting together policies. How do we manage those policies? The role of prospect management professionals versus development coordinators versus frontline officers, to even core prospect research, like developing a rating methodology, maybe helping take that rating methodology and expand it to regional with considerations of the different wealth and economic realities of different regions of our constituencies. To looking at how we use our resources, how we align our work within our database, our CRM systems. Developing programs is really a core to our philosophy. We're a consulting firm after all, so helping organizations to be better and to help you look good really makes us look good. So we work really hard at that. And when you have a program, it might be that you just want to check up, or you want to tune that, or you might be a great program and you want to be even greater. And those are perhaps our favorite projects, is taking already great organizations and making them even better through collaboration. You provide so much to the table in terms of the nuance, the culture, what's worked there, the people, all those realities. We bring an outside perspective, we bring data science, and we can test things that to see if things are provable or not. And through that synergy and collaboration, we can find really something wonderful. And it might be as simple as just managing and creating new policies. It could be rethinking our size and our alignment of staff to the right things. It could be what are the resources we're using. It could be more holistic, the integration between the prospect development team and the overall organization. Where should analytics live? How should it meet the needs of our major gift team? But now we've got increasing needs in annual giving, or alumni relations, or with our membership or our subscribers to our arts organization, or how do we do more dynamic work around our patients? Flessner is unique in offering a fully dynamic scoring where the scores change as the behaviors change, something that we can provide that maintains the dynamic nature of your very prospects themselves. So within BWF Insight, all of these are separate and distinct suite of services that we can offer, finding the areas perhaps where you have gaps or opportunities for the biggest growth. But we also do fully outsourced operations in all of these areas. And for many organizations, they might have had full-time analytics professionals in the past and have decided that their main use of the analytics was to build a certain number of predictive models, conduct certain analysis projects, and be at some key meetings. And they've instead had us build those several models per year, done distinct analysis projects and been at key meetings at for a price that's often less than what their own analysts are, often half the price. And that might make sense. Certainly building in-house, the biggest value is that no one knows your data like you do, and the nuance and the way to implement that. I think the benefits of outsourcing are the time, the return, since you're paying us to do that, we better deliver on that, and sometimes you don't have that with all of your staffing. But the downside is we might not know that all the nuance at first. But I can tell you among all the service offerings out there, since our focus is on internal data, like the Amazon approach, people that bought this book might buy that other book. Since we're looking heavily at your data, we're going to take the time to learn about your internal transactions. Even if you're asking us to acquire other data or supplement that, it's going to be by far the most catered approach. I like to say that we're artisanal in our predictive modeling approach. Sometimes I've compared us to cabinet makers. You might go out and buy cabinets at Lowe's or Home Depot's or Menards, and they might be perfectly good kitchen cabinets. Or you might hire a custom cabinet maker who's going to study your kitchen, the outside, use reclaimed wood, and fit just the perfect cabinets just for your home. Well, we're like the latter. We do the perfectly customized analytics approach, but our pricing is very similar to those that are off the shelf. And that's because for us, it's a pride. We're getting paid in a job well done as much as the fees that we offer. So full virtual staffing throughout analysis, scoring, our identification, our feeding and maintaining portfolios, determine the metrics, establishing new programs, and evaluating and enhancing programs that exist. BWF Insight is proud to provide the total pipeline solution. So why do the leading nonprofits choose BWF Insight? First of all, we've been innovative. We've had a history of advancing the fundraising profession. That's what's driven us. I mean, from the beginning, with Bobby Strand, we're really trying to establish research as a profession, her instrumental role in the APRA organization, throughout the many great people that have come through these doors, our alumni that we're so proud of, even to this day. The new work we've established in putting fundraising analytics on the map, using data science in a holistic sense, new ways that we've approached prospect management, solicitation, and horizon-based prospect management approaches. Innovation is what drives us. It's not simply just to consult, it's really to transform philanthropy. We're integrated, fully aligned with your program. A lot of times people think of their analytics as something that we need to integrate with our database system. And sure, that makes sense, but it might be at the expense of integrating with our whole business process. What's most important is that the analytics align with what you're trying to do. Are we predicting the right behaviors because that's what we're feeding for our pipeline? Is it aligned to how we're managing prospects, how we're feeding the portfolios to the metrics that we're doing, or does it simply work with our CRM? That's an important consideration. I would argue that integration with your program is the most important distinction, and certainly all our data can live in any database system. That's the easy thing. Is it insightful? The clarity of context and positive disruption. I think for us, that has been a key selling point. We try to really determine insight. How does this fit in the context within your organization? It's not simple enough to say we need to do more of this or less of this, but what's working in comparison to what we've been doing before? How do we do things that change not for change's sake, but because it's going to have a positive ROI, and that's based in data. It's not the gut assessment we've used before, but we've tested it. We know this will work because it's been proven to work. And then inspired. Our goal is really to be collaborative with you. It's not simply that we come up with these great things. I'd say most of our ideas come from you, and we're happy to be the connected glue that puts all the great ideas that come out of this wonderful industry. Because fundraising really is a noble profession. We are amazed by the philanthropists out there, the money that they give to make this world a better place. It's really, it's beyond heartwarming. It's extraordinary what these donors do. And we're in the front line. We're teaching people how to be philanthropists. That's a really noble profession. We're teaching the academic community for philanthropists. So it makes sense for us to pay attention to what's the curriculum for that. Well, data science for the business of fundraising, what that really means is that we take it very seriously, that philanthropy is a wonderful thing. We have a noble role in identifying and creating philanthropists, and then as an organization we need to develop that curriculum so that we can be both respectful and helpful in advancing that profession. So BWF Insight, data science for the business of fundraising, now offering the total pipeline solution. I'm Josh Birkholz. I look forward to hearing from you again. You can find us at www.bwf.com and at bwfinsight.net. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.